morning, noon, evening or night, depending when you're watching this video. My name is Legend and welcome back to World of Tanks and the Greatest of Games series, where I will show you some of the greatest games with the greatest moments highlighted. And we are starting off watching Zeegod, translated to Sea God, in his XM57. And of course he will live up towards his name, not the sea part, because well, he's playing on El Aluf. There is water, I guess that is some sea, but he's going away from that. No, it's going to refer towards the god in his name, because he will give a god level performance. And he does that by going in pretty aggressively forwards within the top left corner of the map, because the enemy heavies haven't really pushed into this flank. And from this position, the XM57 can perfectly peek corners with minimal weak spot exposure, retreating immediately to dictate the crossfire between him and the enemies. And with this tank having a high alpha damage but a low DPM, these are the most wanted scenarios to aim for with this vehicle. And it also helped that he basically doesn't need to aim anywhere, because with his premium rounds he can pretty much spam heavy tanks, especially that poor KV5, pretty much anywhere.
Why the fuck you lying? Why you always lying?
However, making a tank a good brawler at close range can make that same tank a bad sniper. So of course he will miss the shot on the lower plate of the T28 on 400 meter distance.
Why the fuck you lying?
Oh. He actually does hit that. Well, I guess every shot counts, and holding in your fire you will miss anyway, so even if the odds are low, just take your shot and maybe RNG will favor you, like in this situation. With such a fortuitous push in, Zeegod can advance even further, reacts immediately to being spotted, really is feeling trigger happy right there, and well, guesses a blind shot in the direction of the hit indicator. A good habit to try this. However, this time the enemy has already moved slightly further. Luckily, his platoon mate Zarva in the Zwilling steps up to do a big damage shot in Zeegod's place, but gets countered almost immediately. And after some back and forward sniping and blind firing again, Zeegod finds himself approaching by the T28, now aims steadily for the weaker underplate, and I swear if that shot didn't hit, knowing his previous sniping shot with way lower chances did hit, well, I would, probably quit making these replay review videos and revert back to only RNG videos like the good old days, because goddamn. While I was rambling off, Zeegod is actually against a 2 vs 1. First trying to protect his teammate in the IS-3, focusing the Lorraine and making himself a harder target, wiggling so he bounces his final round, finishes him off before he could flank around, forcing him to give his rear to the T-34. Then uses the dead tanks around him to cover against the T-34, who now tries the same and bait Zeegod to take a risky shot. However, with some careful aiming, premium shells and the armor flashlight giving him the green light, he still managed to find a damaging shot, but does get distracted long enough for the Su-130 to flank him around. He decided to move forwards while the T-34 is stunned and outflank him so he can finish him off and stay in cover against the Su, who still surprises him a bit but lands his shot into his tracks, allowing Zeegod to retaliate before the Su could hide behind the dead Lorraine. Now he traverses more carefully towards the middle, reloading HE against the final likely armored tanks, gets a lucky bounce off from the RHM and easily deals with him with one HE shell. But the other SU-130 knows what's up and doesn't let Zeeroth get a glimpse of him. So it remains a 2 versus 1 again. With all the tanks being potentially one shot for each other, the battle comes to a standstill as Zeeroth makes his second and arguably his most blatant mistake to play too safe this time around, laying an ambush all the way at A1 for a while, but gets surprised when both enemies are starting to get pressure, and unfortunately the XM can do a lot but isn't fast enough to make it back towards the cap, which unfortunately resulted into a loss. So a big heartbreak this replay, unfortunately, but a great performance nevertheless. Getting into the most optimal position for this tank, being highly aggressive but still cautious and reactionary towards potential sniping rounds. And after that, demonstrating the great capacity for this tank to brawl when facing against multiple enemy tanks, doing pretty much everything right except for the play at the very end, where he actually should have been located more towards his cap for his ambush tactic. Moving on towards the next replay, and we are watching Zarva, which we already had a brief cameo in the previous replay with the Zweling, now playing his T49, another high alpha damage tank with, of course, the derp gun. So after making his initial spotting round, he tries to pry a bit further at the foliage edge of the forest here on Moravanka, spotting him an Ares which he fully claims the assist damage of. These locations at Moravanka being the most dangerous to be spotted at, because most of the enemies are positioned on the equal location with clear vision towards each other. So whoever spots the other team first is bound to get rewarded, with the spotted tank having very little time to react towards the bombarding fire of multiple enemies. So he does the same further on, but now his teammates aren't really in the position to see them anymore, so they get off with only a few scratches. And after that, it doesn't take a while before he spots his counterpart. Zarva immediately turns his hull around, not to invite the enemy T49 for some
Surprise!
but to be able to escape quickly if he would come too close, spotting him by proximity or after Zarva has fired an ambush shot at him. Unfortunately, it didn't pan, but you see how quickly he is able to disengage and let the enemy have no chance to fire an aimed shot back. So, of course, he does it again. Having the seemingly more superior camera stats, he gets close enough for another shot, which again unfortunately misses this time. But now you see what happened if he gets spotted being turned towards the enemy line. He has to turn around, exposing more of his tank, gets hit, but luckily for him this time, the incoming shot also results into no damage. But the third time is the charm, confirming having better camo and outspotting his counterpart, which he now finishes off with a direct hit and still doesn't get spotted in the process. Kind of confusing. Going back towards the actual gameplay, Zarva gets a very neat aim shot at distance, hitting and killing the Cocodrilo. And with the backline confirmed almost being non-existent, he goes in to deliver his own
Surprise!
but towards the TBT, getting not fired back at all by the TBT and the AE Phase 1, who are focused on his teammates. So he goes in again for the second round of
Surprise, but sex.
wrecking him quite the amount of damage already. But he isn't done, as the now fully isolated AE Phase 1 misses him. He goes into a third round of, say it with me,
Surprise.
side sex into the tracks. Unfortunate again, but you can only roll a 6 a limited amount of times with a derp gun like that. However, the artillery kills his teammate, so he has to turn his attention towards the AE Phase 1 again. And again with the spotting, how is Zarva not spotted between all of these bushes? Enough time has passed, right? I mean, oh my god, this game sometimes with its spotting mechanics, I just don't know. However, no time to dwell on that as the game ends and more distracted enemies are presenting themselves to Zarva. As he fires another side shot into the STRV and rams him to death later on. And with still the amount HP that he has left, he is able to trade a shot with the T-57 Heavy by slowly moving forward from behind cover in order to keep his aim circle as little as possible. A great tactic to use with derp guns like these. So in this replay we saw some great initial spotting from Zarva on the edge of the forest of Nurvanka. Also a great tactic to turn his vehicle around before getting spotted by his ambush shot, being able to make a quick escape. And later on focusing some more isolated targets who were more occupied with his teammates, so he could deliver quite a ton of towards multiple enemies, wrecking him a astonishing 4,500 damage with this derp gun. With a neat little great tactic at the end, driving slowly forwards in order to keep the aim circle as small as possible, as cherry on the cake of this great replay. And finally we are finishing off with another god. It's God Lys. Please kill me. Playing in his Leox on Prokhorovka. So he decides to go towards the hill and gets a nice early shot into his counterpart, and with quite a bit of backup with him on his flank, he feels confident enough to push further onto the hill and gets another shot into the enemy Leox. Now, despite having a big polar, its Godlys is able to stay hull down and snap in some more shots without the enemy being able to hit his cupola weak spot back. By weaving back and forward with this power to weight ratio, it can be rather hard for the enemy team to hit a weak spot, even though it is as big as a weak spot as you typically see with these French medium tanks. But combined with the great gun handling, he is instead quite able to hit his shot back while making these quick forward and backward movements. Now his teammates do take the initiative to push in even more aggressively, and of course its Godlys is more than happy to join in, focusing whatever comes into view and is still alive after his next reload. That's why he didn't target the T-34-2 anymore, instead searching for another target because he knew his teammate could finish that one off within his reload. Still gets hit by the Scorpion G just before he could hide behind our building. Quite a ridiculous shot. That Scorpion was falling back, but still could hit a high roll while barely standing still. Yet that will cost him his tanks, while its Godlys can still continue with half health and already over 4,000 damage, racking up 2 kills in process. Of course, after winning this flank, he goes towards his favorite position where he pummels down into the rear of the Conqueror.
Surprise!
No, it's not funny anymore. A position we of course have seen him use more often if you have watched one of my previous videos featuring its godlies. You have watched those, right? Right? Well, if you didn't and you sometimes miss those videos, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon right there and you will not miss any of those videos. Just saying. Well, back to the game. It's quite a standoff, quite typically for this map. It's godlies. His team do have the number advantage, but are about equal on HP. So it takes a while before a new enemy gets spotted, but of course its godlies is still in the optimal position to react quickly when it does happen. And it is wrapping up from here on as its godlies has the space and time to move in closer. It does make an excellent quick reload towards HE for the SU. Also kills the Waffentrigger and outmaneuvers the UDAS. And with his teammates coming in with support fire, just in time for its godlies to finish the game still alive with over a whopping 8,500 damage done and almost getting a top gun in the process as well. So once again getting into quite the aggressive position this time, not because you notice that the enemy aren't really pushing this flank, but your team actually is. Quite surprising to see a team that is for once quite eager to push this flank, and its godlies takes full advantage of it, racking up huge amounts of damage to focus targets which are still alive when he is reloaded. And with the flank 1 going towards his favorite position, being able to get flanking shots into multiple enemy tanks, and of course being quick enough to rack up most of the damage of the final few enemy tanks by moving in just before the rest of his team could arrive. And with that, that's the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Later. I guess that's happened when you record 2 videos in a row. Fuck!